guys, Weinraub AKA the Handsome Homebuyer, and on this week's educational vlog, we're talking about the different Section 8 or program-based programs that are out there for landlords on Long Island. A lot of these things are national. However, we're speaking about Long Island specifically because that's the market we live, operate, and make money in, okay? If you haven't checked out my text platform, obviously, there's the number right there. I'm sure coming across the screen. Having a lot of one-on-one engagement with people, a lot of people doing deals based off the teachings that I'm doing in there, asking me questions, and a lot of great things happening, so definitely check it out. Okay, so I think the most important thing to understand is that a lot of people just call program-based tenants Section 8 as if Section 8 is an all-encompassing thing, and it's not. Section 8 is a specific program, not every housing program. So the first one we have is obviously Section 8. Now every township has their own Section 8. So here we're on Long Island, we have Nassau and Suffolk County, Town of Hempstead, Town of Babylon, Town of Brookhaven, and the villages, Village of Patchogue, etc. All these places have their own Section 8 program. They control it, they have their own caseworkers, they issue the vouchers, they monitor it, they bring in the tenants, all that stuff. So that is specific to that particular township. Now, important things to know on all these things is, again, you have a caseworker, which is great. If you have any issues with the tenants, you can always reach out to the caseworker, and vice versa. If the tenants have any issues with the landlord, they can reach out to the caseworker. You have a lease that is with Section 8, not with the tenant specifically themselves. So Section 8 as the program is on the hook for the portion of the rent that they are paying. The tenant is responsible to pay up to 30% of their income towards whatever the rent is, okay? Second one is DSS. So DSS is Department of Social Services. DSS can be used in a couple different capacities. It can be used as a subsidy to one of these other programs. So like for example, let's say you're renting a house on a Section 8, it's $2,000 a month, and Section 8 is paying $1,500 a month, and there's a $500 delta per month. The tenant might have DSS to pay, let's say, $300, and then they're gonna pay $200. And that's something that typically stays forever that I have seen, but it really, really depends. Now, DSS as a standalone by itself, you don't have any of these other programs and it's just straight DSS. Typically, this is what I say. A, you have a lease with the tenant themselves. So understand, if there's an issue of any kind, DSS is not responsible for paying the rent, or if for some reason they cut the voucher, which is a lot of times what happens, which I'll explain in a minute, you have to deal directly with the tenant themselves. You have to evict the tenant, DSS is out of the equation, and it's just you and the tenant. So while you are receiving money from the subsidy, you don't have the same backing that you do from, let's say, a Section 8 program. The other thing that I've also experienced with DSS is usually it's not a forever thing. It's typically a program that is aimed to help people get back on their feet, and then they start to reduce the voucher amount. So in my experience, what I've seen is this. In Section 8, the rents typically go up every October. They get bumped up, right? It's called FMR, or fair market rent, which we'll talk about in a second. Usually goes up every single year in our market because rentals are so scarce. So, and I've reached out to DSS when, let's say, rent was due, and we were gonna increase the rents because the lease was up. And they said, you know, we don't do increases the same way, and by the way, we're giving you $500 less. I'm like, well, where am I supposed to get it from? They said, oh, get it from the tenant. I'm like, well, the tenant's not working. They said, well, not really our problem. I'm like, great, then the tenant's gonna have to leave. And they said, okay, that's not a problem. You can do that. You're gonna have to go through the eviction process because it has nothing to do with us because you have a lease with the tenant. So remember and understand exactly how DSS works, okay? CDC stands for Community Development Corp. Excellent, excellent, excellent program. It is a not-for-profit based out of Suffolk County, and what they do is they issue vouchers the same way Section 8 does. You know, keep in mind Section 8 and CDC, it takes many years, like, you know, 3 to 10 years at this point on average to get a voucher. So typically people, you know, don't want to do things to ruin apartments or lose them, because if they lose them, they're not getting them back. So CDC, same type of scenario. They have caseworkers. You have a lease directly with CDC. They really run an excellent, excellent, excellent operation. The CEO there, I've spoken to her before. She's great, and they really do a great job. Options for Community Living, another excellent program, not-for-profit, typically funded by like Medicare, Medicaid, or something along those lines. They have all different types of programs, mental health, etc. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll rent a house from you and they will put different people in each room, and they'll have caseworkers and people come by to work with them depending on the condition that they have and the needs that they have. So you also have a lease with options. Options actually tends to pay a little bit more, which I'll explain in a minute when we get over here, but very, very good program, somebody I recommend working with. HUD-VASH usually kind of works a lot of times in conjunction with the CDC, but HUD-VASH, based out of the VA, is obviously a veteran-based program. They have a bunch of different ones. They have temporary housing, which is like more of like a 9-month thing if veterans are coming back from somewhere or depending on the situation. So they'll do 9 months or 12 months, and then they'll also link them with different voucher programs, again, usually CDC, to place them permanently. Again, very, very, very good program, great people to work with. The Northport VA has been exceptional, and we do a lot of work with them as well, and work with the veterans. There's a bunch of different temporary housing type of programs where, you know, if let's say a man or woman is in a domestic violence situation and they have to leave and live somewhere for 6 months or 3 months or 9 months, or if somebody's in a fire, you're dealing with insurance companies, things of that nature. Temporary housing can be a great thing. There's certain programs that will, you know, rent it for the entire year and utilize it, and there's certain places that will just come in and rent it in the short term. It really depends. There's a lot of these programs out there, but they are worth looking into. Homeless shelters. Homeless shelters is a very, very interesting business model. Can be extremely lucrative. So there's 2 ways to go about doing it. You can lease the house to a homeless shelter operator who can then operate the homeless shelter, because that's obviously a business in and of itself. There's a lot of regulations. You basically get paid per the number of beds you have. Depending on the square footage of the bedrooms, you can have multiple beds per room. But there's licensing and regulation, and they're not the easiest things to get if it doesn't currently have the ability to be rented as a homeless shelter. The second thing is you can actually operate the homeless shelter, which is extremely lucrative. I've heard numbers in the $125 to $175 per night per bed range on Long Island. That may not be 100%, but that's what I've heard from a number of different people, which obviously if you have, you know, 5, 8, 10, 15 beds, can be very, very, very profitable. So extremely profitable, obviously a lot of management associated with that, but if you get the business model down, you're good to go. Silo. Silo is another program. Silo is very similar to DSS in the sense that the lease is with Silo, The lease is not with Silo, the lease is with the person themselves. So while Silo is paying, and Silo is similar to DSS, the payments a lot of times drop off, like I said. In Silo, they don't. They're trying to get people onto Section 8, onto CDC. But again, for the time being, the lease is with the tenant, not with Silo. So if there's an issue with the tenant, you have to evict the tenant. Silo is not going to step in and help you, right? And with all these programs, the moment you start eviction, they give them a certain amount of days, 30, 60, 90 days, and then they stop paying their portion of the voucher in regards to the program. So just understand, obviously having a program is a great thing because you have people backing the tenant in different capacities, right? But at the end of the day, it's not 100% foolproof. If you have an issue with a tenant and the tenant's not paying their portion, or they're trashing the place or whatever it is, you're gonna have to evict them. You're ultimately not gonna be getting paid most likely for a certain period of time, and you're gonna have to go through that process and deal with it. A lot of them will pay for damages depending. Most of them just have security. The one thing I will say about DSS is I had one person trash a place, and it was a DSS tenant, and DSS came in within 10 days. They videotaped everything. We gave them the invoice for the damages. They paid the bill, good to go. So that is the one good thing I will say about that. As far as the rents go for these things, just so people understand, it's based off FMR, or fair market rent. If you go on the HUD website, you can look at it. It's on a per county basis for everything across the country. So what you do is whatever the FMR is for that bedroom count, 1 through 5 bedrooms, you take that number and then you minus the utilities. Every one of these programs has a utility deduction grid, and the deductions depend on what utilities are included in the rent and what aren't, and then the types of utilities that are there. For example, right now, if you have electric heat, you're gonna be getting the most money net to you as a landlord. Oil's the worst, gas is middle. And they change depending on what the price of these things are. Also depends on the type of hot water you have, things of that nature. is water included? Is the tenant paying for it? Side note, very important thing. Always keep the water in your name as the landlord, even if the tenant is paying it, and have the tenant reimburse you for the water. Reason is that water is the only thing that is lienable. So if you put electric in your name, it follows the person. Someone doesn't pay the electric on your house, it follows the person. They go somewhere else, PSE&G comes after them, personal judgment, whatever it is. If you don't pay water, water stays on the property. It's lienable. So if a tenant's not paying you water, if the water's in the tenant's name and they're not paying it and you think that they are, all of a sudden you get a big lien on your property. They could possibly force an auction. It becomes a big deal. So always keep the water in your name and have the tenant reimburse you. Obviously, subscribe. If you like this, I hope you did. Drop a comment down below. We know everything there is to know pretty much about all these programs, so we're happy to help. If you guys have any questions, hit me up on the text platform. Again, right here, there's the number, DM, Instagram, you name it, we got you. See you on next week's educational vlog.